identify as white, started bringing up something called the Great Replacement. Put simply, the Great Replacement theory says that too much immigration of non-white folks to countries that are mostly made up of white folks is bad.
Now, this is an important concept, and this is why the Book of Dark Truths is such a critical lesson to help you navigate. You see, the Great Replacement theory is quite comical because it relies wholly on lies and also on a psychotically racist thinking, which is errant thinking and evil thinking. I'll tell you why. Number one, they're saying that they can't have non-whites come into white countries. It's not right. It's not fair. But that would make sense if we were in Europe, which is a subcontinent or a part of a continent. You see, the Europeans are such supremacists and liars that they've taught you that Europe is a continent when in fact it's not. So they have lied to you, teaching you that there's 7 continents when there in fact are only 6. The Europeans do not have their own continent, such as, say, the Africans. But their racism has caused them to tell you a blatant lie such that they could claim their own continent. But I say that to suggest this. If we were in Europe and we were saying, oh, we don't want to be replaced, we, the white Europeans, that would make sense, for Europe is the home of you whites. That's the factory of the whites. That's where you come from. And to be replaced in your homeland, I mean, that is a bit strange. I could agree with that. Europe for the Europeans, Africa for the Africans, China for the Chinese, all sounds reasonable. However, uniquely among the peoples of the earth, one particular group of people is particularly vicious. And they don't say Europeans, Europe for the Europeans. They pretty much say everything for the Europeans. Yes, they invade China and Asia. They took over the entire continent of Australia through utter murder and violence, evil, you might say. They did the same thing to the whole continent of North America, and they did quite a number on the continent of South America as well. They didn't skip Central America. Their violence spread there. Then they went to the massive continent of Africa, tried to wipe them out as well. There's only one people that have attempted such a thing. No other peoples can you identify as that level of vicious colonials to where they go and actually replace the population. Now, the irony is that you now find significant populations of whites in North America, which we call today America and Canada. And then they complain as though it's not right for them to be replaced or reduced in population, even though it's not occurring by murder, which is how they got here. Somehow it's strange that, like, all of a sudden we need to respect who's on the land. But when it came to the Aboriginals, or the Native Americans, you might say, or those that they wrongly called Indians, when they were about to be replaced by you through murder, it was all good. We didn't need any theories. We didn't need to protest. It just was what it was. From sea to shining sea, it was destiny. So this is an important thing for us to really think about, just the nature of their lies, and not to get wrapped up in their lies and their deceit, because they've been fooling you and I for centuries, and you must wake up from this slumber. But let us carry on for a bit, then we'll move on to the next piece.
Not only that, those who promote the Great Replacement theory argue that welcoming immigration policies for non-whites are part of a plot.
Now, here's the irony, and you should find this to be extraordinarily comical. They're out to get us. So you have basically, if all dogs were a breed, the Europeans would surely be the pit bull, which is to say, people do have them as pets, but they're liable to snap on you and kill you. And that goes for the owner and as well as the children of the owner. Extraordinarily vicious are these people. The evidence is extraordinary. There's none that compare to them. And despite them being extraordinarily vicious, evil, I'm talking about RAPE, I'm talking about genocide was their invention. All of that, despite that being them, those are their inventions, they say they're out to get us. Who could be out to get you? You're the only one that's out to get anyone. World War II, that's a European affair. World War II, that's a European affair. World War III, it's a European affair. Who could be out to get you? No one. It's not even sensible. Yes, it's funny the way you're taught history. You're taught history in a very specific way that attempts to remove the evil reality of European conquest. You're taught history in a way that is extraordinarily dishonest. The history you learn in the second, third, and fourth grade, and I know because I was an elementary school teacher, they have told the history in a way that suggests that North and South America were sparsely populated. And when the white Europeans came here, and it suggests that they came here on purpose, when in actual fact, there were certain winds that were emerging that pushed them here on accident, which is why that the natives here were called Indians as opposed to what they really were. That's because someone was trying to get to perhaps India. Maybe he was trying to get to India, so he thought these were Indians. Come on. And when the Europeans ended up here on accident, then they misnamed these people. And they also found that they could do their usual 1-2, which is RAPE, murder, steal. Steal the gold, steal the silver, and steal the land. That's what they do. And they murdered millions upon millions. We're talking about hundreds of millions dead. And for some curious reason, in the second, third, fourth grade, we just call it Thanksgiving and wear nice hats of feathers and, commemorate the natives as though we're not standing upon their bones as we speak. That's what the Europeans do. They erase your history and then they lie about who you were and then they lie about who they are. They're murderers. That's what they are. They're murderers. They lie about who they've been and who they are today. They are still to this day vicious, evil murderers.
Meant to either weaken or replace the political power and culture of white people living in Western countries. When I say Western countries, it's not just Europe I'm talking about. I'm also talking about the Americas, Australia, and New Zealand.
Now, I want to point out something to you. You see, white people only come from Europe, only. But you have them widespread in North America, widespread in New Zealand, widespread in Australia. They invaded those places. Murder. Now, here's the thing. What you all often don't realize is when you're speaking in coded language, when we say Western countries, what do we mean? I'll tell you. We mean white countries. That's what we mean. We mean white countries. Western is a code language for white. It's a racially coded language. It's a euphemism for white. Come on, work with me here. That's all that is. Don't act dumb now. Yeah, some of you are engaging in white supremacy and don't even know it. I try to be aware when I'm doing. Shout out to Falcon. He writes, these Spanish conquistadores strangled that last Inca king after he converted to Christianity. Absolute animals, indeed. And the irony of the Europeans and their claim to be civilized, they're the most murderous, vicious, perverted persons on earth. And ironically, what they do is they call you what they are. They behave like animals. They live filthy, and then they call you uncivilized, filthy animals. Isn't that ironic? And they're so good at stealing and claiming other people's cultures as their own. It is really quite remarkable. These Europeans are so dishonest that they'll say that Egypt is in Europe, right? Egypt is clearly in Africa. They want to act like it's in Europe. Then you have the Arabs want to act like Egypt is in the Arabian world. All silliness. All has been disproven. But these people are marketing masters. Shout out to Leon supporting the work. Now, also acknowledge free. He writes, Elon calls his views trolling to convince fools that he's not a racist, right? But you can't fool me. Shout out to Mr. Jones. He writes, Peace the Saints had a question. Do you think that the grid go down? Let's go ahead and carry on. Let's get back to this work.
By the way, you might want to check out my video about Western values when you get a chance. Simply put, the Great Replacement is the alleged replacement of whites by non-whites. It often overlaps with a larger theory called the white genocide conspiracy theory, which...
Now, here's the great comedy about this. You really don't see many genocides occurring that have nothing to do with white people. Anytime you see a genocide, it's either waged by Europeans directly, or they've reorganized a people, usually as a result of colonialism and or violence, and they've put people at odds. Rwanda, Cambodia. So you almost never see a genocide that's not directly enacted by Europeans or a direct result of how Europeans reorganize societies. But ironically, those people, Europeans, who have never been victim of a genocide committed by non-Europeans are bluffing and creating lies as though they should be scared. It's just not even sensible. It's not even sensible.
Which revolves around the beliefs that powerful people are trying to prevent whites from having kids. Often the conspiracy is blamed on, you guessed it, Jewish people.
And here's the comedy. When you look at, say, X or even YouTube, you have a bunch of people who are essentially imbeciles and they're trying to escape their own responsibility. And rather than admit that you have too much LGBTQ in your media, your government, and your schools, and LGBTQ, of course, homosexuality, in other words, is going to reduce birth rates, you fools. And you also feed your citizens garbage and portray it as food. You call it McDonald's, but it's really garbage. And then you see that the women are less fertile, the males are less masculine, and there's spikes in homosexuality that you promote on Netflix. And then you blame the Jews. Amazing. Amazing. The Jews have done everything. But here's the funny thing. They blame the Jews and then say that the Jews are not white. Well, in actual fact, the Jews are clearly white, and they also clearly come from Europe. So you guys are clearly lying. That's the level of lies. They tell you not to believe your own eyes. You can look at the Jews and see that they're white, but they tell you not to believe your own eyes. You're looking at them like these guys are white, and they're saying that they're not white. They're telling you not to believe what you can see. This is sick, ladies and saints. It's truly sick.
This theory is manipulative because it equates normal patterns of immigration with murder. It's trying to put a big equals sign between the new Salvadoran or Syrian who lives down the street and a mental image of a concentration camp. Now, obviously, if they literally did that, then you and I wouldn't fall for the messaging. Therefore, the messengers have to be a little bit more subtle about it.
And who are the messengers? They're podcasters. They're Elon Musk. That's who they are.
And lately, they've gotten pretty good at manipulating us. Here's the thing, though. Not only are those who preach about the Great Replacement theory manipulating us, but as it turns out, the entire theory is bullcrap. It's literally not backed by evidence at all. There is no secret plot to get rid of white folks, but let's just say that there was. Well, they must be doing a pretty poor job, eh? Since there are more white folks now than ever before. You might be thinking,
now this is an important piece. They talk about genocide, but there's never any murder. The only time you can observe murder, or shall we say death, maybe call it war, the only time you observe whites being murdered is usually when they're murdering each other. World War I, World War II, World War III, which is currently underway. That's when you observe it. And even Noam Chomsky points out that the Europeans have had wars among themselves for centuries, tons of them, because they're a warlike, violent people. Now, the great comedy is that they attempt to assign the nature of being violent to the blacks, which is comical because the Europeans have murdered entire continents of people. Yes, you guys heard of the Aboriginals? You may have never heard of the Aboriginals. Aborigines. Yes, those are the people who are original to Australia. And what do those people look like, ladies and saints? Well, I'll show you, because your teacher in high school and in college never showed you because they want to keep it secret. Here are the Aborigines. They're black. If you can't notice, they're black. Yes, they're a different kind of black, that's for sure, but they're black. This one's darker than I am. You'd have to call that black. Black, 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 black. That whole entire continent is supposed to be black. But that whole entire continent is not black. Why? Because the devils went in there and they did what they do. Murder. That's what they do. They murder. Is murder not violent? Then how then could they call us violent when they murder entire continents? They exterminate entire peoples. And in fact, their viciousness is so unparalleled that, for example, in the United States, let's say during the period of enslavement, white families in America would not only lynch a black male, which is to say hang him and have his, breathing and everything be cut off with his body weight on that rope, but they would also castrate him. They would take his genitals and cut it off. Is that necessary? No. Only if you're a vicious, violent, sadistic animal. And then just to add to it, then they would have a picnic. Yes, they would sit down, put out a blanket, and have the whole family eat while that corpse hangs in the air. Those are monsters. Those are devils. If you ever wonder that's what a devil is. You don't need to die to see a devil. They are among us, and they continue to do their work. I don't want to hear any fake crime statistics about, well, you know who does more of the murders? Who does more of the violent crime? Hold on, white supremacists. Do me a favor. How many bodies have you caught in Ukraine? How many bodies have you caught in Libya? How many bones are we standing on right now? How many bodies did you catch while eradicating everyone in the Australian continent? How many people did you murder to take over what we today call Hong Kong? How many people did you murder to make it such that most of the people holding power in Mexico are white? You turn on Telemundo, they all look like Europeans. How many people did you murder? Where are those statistics? Oh, you don't count that as murder. You don't count your murder as murder. I see. Fascinating. I see. Okay. And you guys might say, well, Marquette, they're vicious. They are. But you know what gets me more disgusted and annoyed than discussing the viciousness of these devil Europeans? The stupidity of these blacks. Good Lord, the stupidity of these blacks. Oh, it kills me. It's extraordinary.
Well, duh.
You encounter this content in the wild. They're graphs and academic sounding language saying that IQ data proves that people of European descent are intellectually and genetically superior. You may know that it's wrong, but you may not have the language for it. So I reached.
Well, it's not about the language, it's the research. You see, the European race scientists, they've been at this for a long time. It's actually quite comical because these people are such psychotic racists that they'll do anything, including lying, to portray themselves as superior and others as inferior. They used to have a theory, which I'll share with you, and this one is pretty ridiculous. They theorized that head size was something that determined intelligence. Yes, the size of your cranial cavity. And they said, well, since Asians have the largest heads, then, proportionally, so that's why Asians are so smart. And, the second largest heads are the whites and the smallest heads are the Africans. So that's why they're so dumb. Only to eventually find out that the Bushmen, which is a certain group of Africans, had the largest heads of all proportionally. And then once they figured that out, they're like, oh, that theory's wrong. Actually, that's not quite right. That's not quite right. Then they created a new theory. And this is what we see consistently among the racists, is that as soon as a black group of people doesn't fit their pseudoscience, and they redraw it, because they're seeking an outcome based on their emotions.